I've been a journalist for the last 28 years, 23 of them at the Star. I'm currently an associate editor at Malaysia Kini. I've done a number of different fields. I specialized in music first of all. Okay, so I specialized in music first of all when I had hair down to here. Hard to believe, but that's how I was back in 1996. And eventually I became a news editor dealing with crime and political stories. I was also very lucky. My father is a retired ambassador to our Vengadesan, so I grew up in 9 countries across 4 continents and came back to Malaysia in my early 20s. And I was also a founding member of PKR actually, because my sifu for history is Professor Syed Hussein Ali, Parti Rakyat Malaysia former president and ISA detainee. So I have this dual interest in politics, left-wing politics, to be honest, and music history. I've also had, this is my 3rd book that I've just published. I'll just tell you about my first. My first has actually sold 6,000 copies. I'm quite happy with that. That's about 42 of Malaysia's most famous crimes, called Malaysian Murders and Mysteries. Get a copy over there if you're interested. So that one is true life crimes. You know, because as journalists we would interact with people like Mona Fendi and Bentong Kali and talk to the family members and witnesses. So I spoke to a lot of my colleague and I who put together the book. We spoke to a lot of professors, veteran journalists, policemen, and lawyers in that book. The second book was quite different. It's a dystopian science fiction novel. I call it Malaya 2057, and of course it's set in that year. But I imagine a world ravaged by climate change disaster and environmental, sorry, not just environmental, but something like pandemic. And so the world is actually decimated and it's taken down a lot of our social construct. But this next one is a rather more down to earth. This goes back to the time when I was a music journalist at the Star. And I actually, it was during the golden age of boy bands, which is not what I'm here to talk about. I interviewed Backstreet Boys and met Boyzone and Westlife, and I'm not very proud or happy of that. But I was also lucky to meet Carlos Santana. I interviewed members of Deep Purple, Jethro Tull, Uriah Heep. Got scolded by Phil Collins once in the early part of my journalism career. Ran into Richard Marx and so on and so forth. So Carlos Santana was one of the most fun people. And what I actually did eventually was this is Tato here talked about writing a column. I had a 10-year column on music history, and then a 5-year column on world politics. What I've done is I've revamped my my music history column, and I've sort of put together some of the most interesting anecdotes, as well as combining it with a music review element, and then some interesting stories that happened to the musicians. So okay, today I'm going to read from Santana. This is the entry. So my book is called 101 Albums You Need to Hear Before I Die. The reason I said that is because there are like 4 books which have the title Before You Die. So I thought that's when you catch me and discuss it while we still have time. So I think I'll need to refer back to this. Okay, so this segment is on Carlos Santana. So this is about Santana's 2nd album called The Practice. Now I managed to interview him back in 1996 when he came down here for a concert. And he was very, very laid back, spoke in hippie style, like, hey man, or just chill, I like your aura. So I was like, oh, okay, this is a very fun person to be with. And again, I too had that long hair hippie vibe back then. So okay, this is the entry on Santana as a Practice. I will never forget how in April 1996, I followed up a half-hour conversation with Carlos Santana by rushing to catch a minibus back in Kampung Pandan. The speedy vehicle made its way hastily to the KL city centre, and yours truly was hanging out of the door, as you do in minibuses back in the 90s. Aside from the biting psychedelic guitar, searing organ, and pulsating rhythms, Santana the band had an interesting hippie vibe and a great underlining message. I also remember that when I was growing up in the 1970s, my parents had liked Latin songs like Jingo, Oye Como Va, and Wahira. While Santana's first 4 albums are all great, I have gravitated most towards the second album, The Practice. Recorded with a core band of Greg Rowley, Santana himself, David Brown, and Michael Shreve, it contains some of the best songs over a long career. These include Black Magic Woman, Gypsy Queen, Oye Como Va, and Samba Pati. So anyway, aside from the music, Carlos and I bonded in quite a rare way during our interview, and it was very exciting to hear him come to Malaysia to deliver a memorable concert. He told me, first of all, that he did not like to be pinned down by genre purists. I like avant-garde music, he said. As far as classical music goes, I think that anything that lasts forever, like Nat King Cole or B.B. King, is as classical as Beethoven. James Brown is as important as Mozart to me. Unfortunately, most people think classical only belongs to white people from Europe. He also answered candidly and slightly metaphysically when I asked him about having to face racism as a Hispanic living in the United States. Unfortunately, racism is part of this planet because most people still live in the third dimension. In the fourth dimension, there's no such thing as fear of diversity. In the fourth dimension, what you basically need is a passion for the highest good of all third people. All people. In this dimension, everyone is looking out for themselves or people from their group, and they're not really interested in equality or justice. They're not interested in the lives of the Aborigines or the Native Americans or anybody else. They're trained, they just want to get their next car, their next TV, the first class travel, 5-star hotels. Carlos also commented on the uneven distribution of wealth in Latin American countries. I believe that ignorance is the mother of violence in this world. We do not know the other, we fear them, and hence we are easily manipulated into violence towards others. If you think about what's happening in the world today, it's not that wrong. We don't understand each other, we're easily driven to hate the other. Luckily, modern Malaysia is relatively calm, but the world is not. Anyway, thoughts are very powerful, said Carlos. They are a magnet. You attract whatever you think, whether it's position, money, power, sex, or liberation. But if it wasn't for spirituality, my music would be dry like a desert. I really speak spiritual values, especially through Hindu, Aboriginal, Native American beliefs. The basic principle is that this planet is our Mother Earth, and we need to heal it and transform each other by doing good deeds. Carlos also told me that it was through meditation that he was allowed to see what liberated him. There's a whole chain of karma. Most people, not all, but most people are not really happy unless they find something to make them miserable. A lot of people like to focus on the small things that can make you miserable instead of the many things that can make you happy. He then gave an analogy about his music. He said, if I make one mistake in front of a large audience, I am haunted by that. When we finish and people are going crazy and happy and excited, I'm just thinking about the time I screwed up. It's the same with news and the media. Everything, what makes the news is bad news. Tragedy, and we all hear about it, we have a negative perception of the world. It shouldn't always be like that. So Carlos said, I'm teaching myself to change the negative into positive. I don't think you have to be a hobo living on the streets and in pain and suffering to write a beautiful song, by the way. He finally shared his belief that great art transcends media hype and makes itself relevant to many generations. I don't like Hollywood. It's an industry that isn't very real. Why are Bob Marley and Jimi Hendrix still bigger than MTV today? Because they managed to be larger than life and transcended the industry and became part of popular culture all around the world, said the great man all those years ago. Okay, everyone, thank you very much for listening to my little ramble. Have a good night.
Yes, yes.